Welcome to Friday Drinks. Can you believe it's the end of another week? And we find ourselves here again, enjoying the company of good friends, talking nonsense and trying to solve the world's problems. Tinashe, what are you drinking this evening?
Thank you very much, George. Today I'm a little adventurous, so I decided to have Mazari and the club soda. And yeah, this is the result.
Where do we hang out with this guy?
Yeah, I find myself asking that question from time to time.
Rufaro, you and me, what are we having?
Oh, today we're having Balvenie, the double wood. It's aged in a oak cask and then a sherry cask. And this particular bottle is especially delightful to me because in November last year there was an election in the US, and I bet with many people that we would witness the end of the Trump era. ERROR. And I'm very happy to report that almost 7 months later, I am still enjoying the fruits of my faith.
And I'm very happy to participate. And as you will notice, I didn't bring my own whiskey today because you're actually serving what I would call the nectar of the gods. I don't know if the camera zoomed in on the bottle, but viewers will be interested to note that during setup, we did a bit of damage. So I think you may find that this evening's discussion is quite lubricated. What are we talking about today? We are talking about an issue that I think many of our viewers have been talking about over the course of the week. I think it's been discussed in many chat groups, it's been all over social media. This SI 127. I don't think we're going to bother with the details of what's in it, etc. I think that's been unpacked on various other fora. But I think we'll go straight into the key question. Gents, why? Why did Uncle JPM do this? And why now? What did he tell us about his intentions? Or it was Uncle George who wrote the SI. What did Uncle George tell us about his intentions? And what do we think his real intentions are?
So, in analyzing this, we should start with understanding the Zimbabwean economy. And we're a dual economy where we have a US dollar economy and we have a Zim dollar economy. So if you look at, and I like to start with 2020, Jan 2020 as a good starting point. Also because I wrote an article about this. And I sort of say something sinister is happening where the economy is not dollarizing, or what is actually happening is we're getting this dual economy, which is going to run for the next 2 to 3 years. And a lot that's going to happen is really the fascination between that dual economy. Now, with the dual economy, then Jan 2020, I would say the economy was probably 30% dollar economy and 70% a Zim dollar economy. So then what has been happening over time is we're seeing a lot more dollars coming into the economy, really driven by remittances and other inflows that have got nothing to do with production in Zimbabwe, but purely because we've exported thousands of people, millions actually, internationally, and also because of international aid. So if you read those numbers, we've got about $1 billion that's coming into the formal channels. Official, but it's a whole lot more outside of that. And then you've got another 800 million in terms of aid money. So what you...
That much?
Yes, it is.
Who are the big players?
The US, the Western nations are the big players in that. And that's about 800 million, just in 2020 alone. So what you are seeing and what you were seeing is that there's a lot of this money that's coming into the economy. And a lot of it, because of the partial dollarization, it was going into a dollar economy where a lot of the retailers, to be honest, and to be frank, and the manufacturers were not necessarily getting this money and then trading on the parallel market. No, they had a competitive pricing system where they could get some of this US dollars and do away with middle people that trade currency and then just import directly with the US dollars that they receive. But the consequence of that is that the market was seriously
So,
dollarized.
so this is one side. What's the other side?
Okay, so the other side was the Zim dollar, and the Zim dollar is purely driven by
Civil servants.
RBZ, but it goes directly to civil servant salaries.
But
And
that's 400,000 employed people or something of that language.
yes,
So it's a big sector. Of the
it's a big sector, and so a soldier earns $19,000, and when you look at what was happening on the parallel market,
How do you know this? Okay.
I think it's a well
It's in the
shared.
public
It's in the
domain.
public domain. But what as long as the rate was moving, you find that real wages were dwindling. And I think that the Zim dollar, the strength of the Zim dollar is purely driven by how much of it is being printed. So if you're not printing, it will actually retain value. That's why over the last 6 months.
Wait. Okay, so dual economy, Zim dollar economy, civil servants, government spending, US dollar economy.
For trading and for storing capital, storing wealth.
So for
Call
the
it
upper
the
classes.
informal sector. I think.
No, it's not upper classes. Remember what I've continuously said about remittances. Remittances are going directly to a guy who's unemployed.
Oh, so he's part of this as well.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Zim dollar economy, US dollar economy. Why did Uncle George write this essay, and why now?
Because the market is fast dollarizing, and that's not something that they would want.
Who's they?
The
And why
government.
wouldn't they want it?
The
Why
government
wouldn't they want it? They also
Because
collect US dollars.
they want to have total control of the monetary system in Zimbabwe. So the idea of the forex market and the idea of money, remember they've got a monopoly on the Zim dollar. And the monopoly and why it's decreed money is they would like to print this money and everyone uses the Zim dollar. But the market, in turn, has rejected the Zim dollar and was now trading in the US dollar economy.
Why has the market rejected the Zim dollar?
Well,
Or has it? Has the market rejected the Zim dollar?
Firstly, I rejected premise that the market has rejected the Zim dollar. You can transact in Zim dollars to buy groceries, to pay for school fees. It actually works. So
I bet whoever gave you that paid Zim dollars for it.
that's an interesting question. I'll have to ask them. But look, you will find this, however, in Bon Marché and Pick and Pay, retailing for Zim dollars. So you can buy it with Zim dollars, right? I know it's not manufactured in this country, and I don't know whether the foreign currency that was used to purchase it came from the auction or other sources, but you can actually pay Zim dollars for it. Which speaks to
You can get money on auction to bring in whiskey.
No, I don't.
Anyway,
I
sorry,
don't know.
that's not the point. Carry on.
My point is, the Zim dollar is very functional. You can buy almost anything with Zim dollars. So this notion that the Zim dollar has fallen out of favor or people aren't transacting in Zim dollars is not true. Yes, there are segments of the economy that prefer to trade in US dollars, but that's not to say that the Zim dollar is less functional.
So why did these guys at the corner of Samora Machel and Simon Wenger and Zeda decide to publish this thing?
Well, they told us why.
And what's their reason?
And their reason is that they believe that funds being allocated on the auction were being abused in one way or the other.
Buying whiskey.
But look, I think that's that's not an interesting question. I think what's more interesting is what does this tell us about where we're going? And I think that if you were to ask yourself the question, what is the vision? What is at the central bank in terms of where we should be going from a monetary policy standpoint? I think the answer is in SI 142 of 2019 that actually abolished the multi-currency regime. Basically what they want is the Zim dollar to be the sole legal tender in this country.
Is that true? Zimra asks you to pay tax in US dollars. So is it true that they want this to be the sole legal tender? Zesa asks certain customers to pay in US dollars. And I mean, the list goes on. All these parastatals want US dollars. The government wants US dollars.
Okay, so I think you're conflating two things. I think you...
Big word.
Yes.
Do you know what it means?
So the state is interested in having access to US dollars, which is why Zimra wants you to pay for your ex-jab import duties in US dollars, which is why ZESA wants some customers to pay in US dollars. The state is interested in having access to US dollars. But what they're also interested in is an economy in which the Zim dollar is the only form of legal tender. The two are not mutually exclusive.
His question is why.
Thank you.
Okay, so why do
Why do they
introduce
the
SI
Zim dollar?
127? It's actually quite interesting. SI 127 of
2021?
2021.
we've had 127 SIs in 5 months, in 150 days. Almost one a day. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Why did they introduce this one?
Look, I think the one I think Tinashe was on something when he speaks to control. So if you think about the ideology of our government, it's inspired by the Chinese. It's combined economics, top down, and they want an economy where the Zim dollar is the sole legal tender gives them more control because they are the issuer of the Zim dollar and they can control the Zim dollars completely.
So will this SI achieve that?
I think so. I think it's more government control. I think where one of the outcomes that will likely be unintended is that there will be less foreign currency flowing into the formal system through retail. So one of the immediate effects of SI 127 is that OK said, you know what, we're not taking US dollars anymore, right? And that's true for a lot of businesses in the retail sector. So I think that the amount of US dollars flowing into the formal system is actually going to shrink because of SI 127. And I don't think that's one of the desired outcomes.
But where will this money go? So you go and stand outside World Remit for 3 hours, you get your $200 from your sister in South Africa or in the UK. What are you going to do with it?
Well, if I'm a law-abiding, God-fearing citizen, I am going to go to a bank. I'm going to change it to Zim dollars at 85, and then I'm going to spend my Zim dollars. Okay? But if I'm a criminal,
bent on undermining or sovereignty.
Yes, I'm going to find a money changer in some shady street corner, and I'm going to convert my $100 or $200 at 130.
And I will have 50% more money.
There's something that has happened and what we need to be very careful about this dual economy is that there's also a dual economy around the goods market. So between the formal sector and the informal sector. And what has been happening over the last, let's call it 1 year, is that a lot of goods and a lot of customers were moving away from the informal sector to the formal sector. A direct effect of this is we're going to see, because nothing has changed in the informal sector. You can still buy your Mazoe at $2 in the formal sector, but in the informal sector. But in the formal sector, we've actually seen an increase in a bottle of Mazoe. So what you're going to see is customers are indifferent, right? Whether they're picking up the product in the formal sector or in the informal sector. And I think that you're going to see people...
Mazoe has a price? Sorry, I'm just stuck on that. Why would anyone pay for it? Anyway.
It's our best export, actually.
Okay, yeah, so customers are indifferent.
Customers are indifferent, and they're going to pick up the product in the informal sector.
No, but it's going to go up in US dollars.
No, that's in the formal sector. But in the informal sector,
it will still be $2.
It will still be $2. And the customer will just pick it up in the informal sector.
But the guy who sells it in the informal sector eventually has to take his $2 back to Schweppes, surely.
Well, you can import it.
From where?
From Mazoe. No, it's actually also manufactured in Mazoe, in
Zambia
and South Africa. So you can import it.
Oh, and then so what you're saying is then I'll also choose between Parmalat milk and
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what's going to happen. So in the goods market, it actually will see money flowing out of the formal sector into the informal sector. So going back to your question,
But is
if
this a
you
factor?
know
Is
this,
this a factor? Because what you're saying implies that most Zimbabweans' income is US dollar denominated and not Zim dollar denominated. Because if your income is US dollar denominated, right, and you don't want to break the law, you're going to go to the informal sector and buy your products, right? But if your income is Zim dollar, surely you're going to carry on shopping in Pick and Pay and one Mache
And the price won't change.
and the price won't change. So your life, you don't care. You're indifferent about SI 127.
so what drives this economy? It's now 2/3 consumer-driven economy, and that 2/3 consumer-driven economy is driven by remittances. It's actually not local salaries; it's remittances, which are US dollar denominated, and aid. Because remember, a lot of people now are receiving aid in US dollars. They literally get US dollar.
Where do I need to register to get some of this free money?
Well, you need to live in airport and other. But the point is, a lot of the consumer-driven economy is driven by remittances. So you're talking close to 2 billion or so, or above 2 billion. That is what drives the economy, this particular economy. Because if you do the numbers, you're looking at 200 million US dollars that comes in. We're not paying that much in salaries, right? So a lot of
So it'll just all go into the shares.
it will just go.
Okay, so
And also products, because a lot of this remittances, it's coming in from South Africa. So I think what people will opt for is just
Instead of money, send me-
just bring
send
in
me
the
the
product.
Okay, but okay, so if you guys are both right, and that
It's
is
unlikely, but anyway.
and that is the direction things are going to take, are we going to see further steps by the government? If you're right that the government wants to control the currency, and if you're right that it's the US dollar is going to become shy and go into the shadows, and then there are even less US dollars to control, are we going to see an SI 128 and an SI 129?
Let's look at Ghana. That's exactly what happened, and that's what's going to happen. Because in this SI, an interesting anecdote is that this was 30 pages long, right? Usually they're 4 pages, 3 pages. So they put great thought to this. This is not the reaction that they were expecting.
You think the length of the document corresponds or correlates to the amount of thought that went into it?
If
But
you
by,
look at
by default, they had to concentrate for 30 pages.
it might have been longer.
I think if you talk to English literature teachers, they might have a different opinion.
I think they were criminalizing almost everything. So it's, well, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, because at the core of it is trying to control the market. You cannot control the market.
So you see this going further.
Yeah.
Rufaro, ZFN this week published an article by Anonymous saying actually it's not a big deal. Yes, it's just another one. And that's kind of tying in with what Tinashe is saying. Is it? Is it just another
Look,
one?
we've seen this movie before. We've lived in a dispensation like this. SI 142 in 2019 basically dropped the multi-currency regime and made the Zim dollar the sole legal tender. And life went on. I don't think, was it ideal? Would we have been better off carrying on with the multi-currency regime? Absolutely. But was it a disaster that we didn't? I don't think so. And so so when I think about SI 127, it's just returning us to this. And also, it's important to point out that the reason why you could actually pay for goods and services before SI 127 in US dollars was because some of the regulations in SI 142 were relaxed to make people cope better with the pandemic. So they didn't say we're changing this forever and we're going back to a multi-currency regime permanently. They said we want you to be able to use US dollars because there's a crisis and your life will be easier if you can transact in US dollars. So we're actually just because we're probably on the tail end of the pandemic, right? touch wood, we're not going to have a horrible third wave. So we're just reverting back to normal, to where we were pre-pandemic. So when you think about it from that perspective, is it a big deal?
Nothing's changed. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys noticed, on the 31st of May, a whole lot of roadblocks disappeared. And you can drive home after 10 p.m. But nobody said the lockdown's over. So you kind of saying, well, don't get too happy. The roadblocks could come back. They're still not in lockdown.
I beg to differ. I think a lot has changed and a lot is changing. One which ZFN Anonymous actually pointed out, which is confidence. That the more and more you have these SIs, the more and more uncertainty you bring into the market, the more and more people start thinking, well, when is the next one? And what's going to happen?
What's it going to say?
And you've criminalized everybody. Even a pastor, the most pious pastors, has been criminalized by this because they too receive money from outside. And if you think about it, the confidence in the financial services sector, the confidence in the goods market as it moves into the informal sector, where now I need a middleman. I think I didn't need a middleman in the last 6 months, but now you certainly need a middleman to trade. And we know how that ends. So I don't think it's quite right to say nothing has changed. And
my mom, who's a retired school teacher and teaches some kids in her spare time, now needs to keep accounting records and she needs a bank account.
Well, look, I think that it's important to separate de facto and de jure, right? So
You got big ones today.
it's the whiskey.
So yes, the law says your mom needs to keep accounting records and open a bank account, right? That's de jure, that's the law, right? But de facto, what are the chances that your mom's going to be watching? Okay, maybe I shouldn't say that. But seriously, what are the are they going to, figure out every retired teacher who's teaching students here and there and ask them to present their accounts and bank statement? No, that's absurd. It's not going to happen. And so I think some of the sure voices like Tinashe, want us all to think the sky is falling, but it's not. We've been in this regime before, and we didn't experience. It wasn't a horror story.
No, 2008 was not a horror story.
No, I'm talking about pre-pandemic 2019, and like I like that you mentioned 2008, right? 2008 was a horror story, right? We had
Why was it a horror
we had
story?
empty supermarkets. Okay, now if you walk into a supermarket today, I guarantee you will find luxury goods with import component that are not priority items at the auctions and will never have currency allocated to them, right?
And
but they are there.
What do you think
right?
is going to happen in the next 6 months?
Why would that change?
Well, the price of a product in the formal sector has to go up.
In dollars.
In US dollars.
In US dollars.
Yeah, but most customers are quite happy to pay in dollars. So what I'm saying is, okay, let me give you an example. Okay,
When you can still find the product.
If you walk into
in the
Bon
informal
Marché,
sector.
if you walk into Bon Marché today, you will find in the alcohol section Heineken. Okay, I doubt very much that the distributor of Heineken in Zimbabwe is getting foreign currency at the auction. Okay, this is in the public domain, right? And it's been happening since the currency regime changed, right? So, at law, de jure, this should not be possible, right? Somebody should have said, where is this guy getting the currency to bring in Heineken?
Let's
go after him. Let's lock him up. This is illegal, right? But I think that Treasury has been reasonable, right? Otherwise, there would be no luxury goods with an import component in any supermarket in this country.
That was the intention. If you remember well, SI 142 of last year, that was actually the intention. And then post that, they then realized that there's a lot of free funds in the market. And then they sort of said, well, we'll allow you to trade, which is not the case with SI 127. Now, free funds, if you have free funds, you now need to go and to the auction or to a authorized or bank and exchange your US dollars at a rate of 85, which is at a 60% discount to the market rate.
Well, okay, gents. Okay, look, we can talk about Mtuli and George's intentions until the cows come home. We don't drink whiskey with them, or I don't. But are we the first to be in this situation? I think, look, let's look at why we're in this situation, right? We've got this fiscal deficit without without budget support from multilateral agencies. We've got a trade deficit without balance of payment support. And add to that, most of the rich nations in the world don't like us, so we don't get aid. So we end up.
But just to correct you there, because I think if Tuli or George are watching this, they will have issues with your statements. So they will tell you that they've actually been fiscally.
That we've got a surplus.
That we've got a surplus.
Okay. That's a subject for another show.
The trade deficit is actually have a trade surplus. And those are the numbers that they show. Those are the accounting numbers. But never mind the
that's a story for another show. I mean, we know we don't have enough money.
The whiskey. Okay.
We don't have enough money in this country, and there's nobody helping us.
Mm.
But we're not the first to be in this situation. Germany after World War One, and I pick after World War One and not World War Two because after World War Two they had the Marshall Plan.
Yeah.
Venezuela today. The other country close to Venezuela that also does strange things.
Argentina.
Well, okay, Argentina for 50 years.
Yeah. If you
North
want to be pedantic, 100 years.
North
No,
Korea.
but okay.
So the question is.
Look at your choice of examples. I think
But let's look at what others have done. What has worked, what hasn't, and how does it compare with what we're doing?
So I like to look at the data. Okay, so the latest inflation numbers for May show year-on-year inflation, annual inflation at 161%. Okay, if you look at the power market for the same period, the Zim dollar basically lost 78% of its value. Okay, 73 to 130, call it 130 today.
So
right?
in
So
11 months.
12 months. I'm looking at a year, right?
Mm.
So what does that tell you? Okay, 78% valuation, not great. 161% inflation, not great. But what the market is saying is that notwithstanding inflation of 161%, it's only to base the currency 78%. Okay, and the inflation trajectory.
Sorry, the 78 is on which rate?
On the power rate. Right. I mean
Let's
the
contextualize
auction rate.
If you had $1 last year,
It's now worth 22 cents.
It's now worth 22 cents, and our buddy here says
It's not bad.
it's not bad.
I'm not saying. I didn't say it's not bad. It's bad. Okay.
The sky is just not falling.
But the sky's not falling. No, I think that your average Zimbabwean has figured it out and is able to plan their lives around this. I mean, we have witnessed significantly worse hyperinflation. I know that's a low bar, but I think that. So, what I was going to say about those numbers, 161 is for May. April was 194%, right?
It's coming down.
So it's coming down, right?
And
So
the nature of inflation coming down is it tends to lag.
yes, it tends to lag. So what that tells us, what the data is telling us, is that there is some level of understanding that reckless printing and growth in money supply is bad for us, and there have been some corrective measures taken, and over the last 6-7 months, the rate hasn't
Can I
moved
ask?
violently.
Can I ask a
So
question?
Mtuli is right. Single digit inflation by December.
I'm not going to agree or disagree
But
with
can
it.
I ask? Can I ask
go
Kufara
ahead.
a question? He has the inflation numbers,
Spot on.
spot on, dead on, right? Can I ask him what the money supply numbers are?
I don't know them offhand, but I'm sure you're about to.
So
Enlighten me. I'm sure you're about to enlighten me, which is why you brought it up.
Oh, no, sorry.
what's curious is that they've kept the numbers away from the public domain since January. The RBZ is not published its monthly
But we can work out these
numbers. It's very difficult to work out.
I'll show you how to. But anyway.
We can after this. But we know that in January, as far as the Zim dollars are concerned, that has been increasing at 385%. And the total money supply has been increasing at 550 or at least above 500%. And that was in January. So that in itself.
But the tone of your contribution is you're assuming that it's got worse since January.
Yes,
Yeah, but
we know
suggesting that
we know
everything
this.
else we're seeing suggests that it hasn't.
Well, you're looking at a number, controlled number, right? So we know this. He knows this very well. If you look at the stock market, do you honestly believe that the amount of money that we've seen going into the stock market just the last 6 months tells us that there's a lot of money that's been created?
But Tinashe,
Well, it could just be that the supply side of the stock market as well has taken a beating because foreigners have been exiting the ZSE for the last 18 months and their float or their holding has been shrinking as a result. So the amount of scrip that's available from foreigners on the sell side has shrunk significantly.
so technical, that's another show. That's another ZFN show. But what we do know, I think, is we also buy groceries every month. And our grocery budget this year has not trebled in Zim dollars. In fact, it's probably stayed more or less the same since January.
A lot of people would dispute that. And,
what do you eat?
And well, it's not just me. Remember, I'm speaking. If you look at the basket of goods, if you look at the Consumer Council, if you look at ZCTU, they've already told us that.
I thought those guys are all politicians.
Well, no, these are people who are representing the civil servants who are actually earning Zim dollars. No, it's quite interesting. You guys.
How much was that in Zim dollars at the beginning of the year, and how much is it now?
I'm not quite sure, but I know in US dollars.
It's still $2.
Okay.
It's still $2, but
Well,
in the stores, it's now $3.
I buy my Castle Lights.
Let's not talk about
when I'm
Castle
not.
Lights. I mean, gentlemen, I think let's be frank here. A
Are
lot
you
of
being
the
racist
civil
against beer?
a lot of the civil servants are not earning money to buy Castle Lights.
But
a lot of civil servants are the ones that are
they're
complaining.
also not earning US dollars to buy my Zoho.
Well, they
for
are
for
actually.
$2.
Actually, they are.
But I've been buying my Castle Light 440 can for 109 bond since late last year. And I'm still paying 109 bond. And sometimes I get it on special at 100 at a supermarket, which I can tell you about.
Thankfully, in the basket of goods, in the inflation basket of goods, they do not include Castle Light.
They do refuse alcoholic beverages.
Yeah, but it's
Who's the economist here and who's drinking? I think this is a good place to end the show before this degenerates into total chaos.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us this week. As you can see, it's been a very animated discussion and it will continue. We still have a bit of nectar of the gods to lubricate the discussion. Tinashe will continue to choke on Mazoe. But please leave a comment, leave a like on our social media pages. Have a lovely weekend. We hope to see you again next week. And as usual, be safe, be good, and if you can't be good, be good at it.